Thanks for coming on the show today. Why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work that you do?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. Well, again, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here. I loved connecting with you earlier, and this is just a great opportunity to continue our really awesome conversation. So, good morning or afternoon or evening, whenever any
Right.
folks are tuning in, or weekend, happy weekend. I like to share who I am by telling the story of my name.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I find it's kind of like a, interesting way to just sort of break the ice and get to know, share a bit about me and also get to know about somebody else too. So I may invite you to take a turn
All right.
if you feel inclined. So my full name is Dr. Malaika Ann Maribel Serrano. So I'll start with the doctor, very brief. I graduated 2 years ago from la Università Cattolica Sacra Cuore in Milano. And I focused on looking at increasing access to opportunity for historically underrepresented students. So my passion is really that intersection of international education or international and
Mhm.
diversity, equity, inclusion. And so had a great opportunity to really dig deep and do some research for about 5 years looking at that topic. So my name Malaika, which rhymes with I like a Malaika.
Love
It
it.
actually, yeah, it actually means angel in Swahili. And my dad gave me that name, my late father, and he heard a song called Malaika. And he said, if I ever have a daughter, I'm going to name her Malaika. And so
Hmm.
that is just a really nice, lovely gift that my late father has shared with me and that I continue to have and hold very dear.
Ah, it's a lovely story. Thanks for
Thank
sharing.
you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then we'll move on to my middle name, which is Anne. So that comes from my mama, Miss Hazel Ann. So mama grew up in the segregated South in the 50s and 60s on a dirt road, no indoor plumbing, and education was her way out of segregation and poverty. And so that grit and determination is something that she has instilled within me. And when I
Mm.
think about the work that I do today at Guild, I often think about my mom and opportunities that have been afforded to her because of the fact she was able to get higher education. So that's really powerful for me.
That, that is very powerful. And I imagine she's got a lot of pride in the fact that you're carrying on this work in the way that you are. Can't wait to
Yeah,
hear more about it.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Um, the last two will come quickly. So my maiden name is Marable, and that actually is a name that was given to my great-great-grandfather, Morris. And Morris was born in 1839 on a plantation in West Georgia, less than 100 miles from where I am today in Atlanta.
Wow.
Yes, yes. And his father was the slave owner, and his mother, Rachel, worked in the house. And when Morris was only 8 years old, he was sold to a man named Marable, which is how we get our name. And so I share that story because, again, this is something that I carry with me into present day and is a real reminder of how important it is to never forget our history
Mm.
because it continues to show up in spite of the rhetoric that might be kind of present among us. We can never forget.
Right. And you can't revise your own history. It is what it is, just like diversity exists, whether people like to believe it or not. So
Yes.
thanks so much for sharing the background and just the context for which I guess you built upon to make the world more equitable and fair in a lot of different ways. So tell me a little bit about Guild
Yeah.
and the work that you're doing at Guild.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Guild, I have the great opportunity to serve as the Vice President for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging.
Mhm.
I joined the company about 4 years ago, and it's been quite the ride. Um, I started by building out the function. We are housed within HR, human resources, and we can talk a little bit about maybe kind of like some of the differences between DEIB being in HR as opposed to another
Mhm.
function, if that's of interest. Um, And but Guild itself, what really attracted me to the position is the company. And so what Guild does is we unlock access to opportunity for America's workforce. And one of the things that we believe very deeply is that talent exists everywhere. Just like Miss Hazel, my mama, talent exists everywhere, but opportunity is not equitably distributed. And so the way that we are able to kind of like increase access is by partnering with our employer partners, and that we provide education and upskilling for their employees, for the workforce, which is really, really exciting and very rewarding.
It sounds like it. So you're trying to, create that opportunity and equity
Mhm.
and access for others.
Yes.
How does that mission drive the internal workplace culture?
Yeah. Great question. So thanks for that, John. My remit, it's both internal and external. However, the majority of my time and energy is spent internal. So working with
Hmm.
guilders. I fundamentally believe you got to take care of home first. And so what that looks like is a lot of the work that we do is focused on the workforce. So how are we bringing people into the company? Making sure that our the hiring practices, the funnel, et cetera, is done in a fair and equitable way. And it is. I'm really, really um, I feel so blessed to work with a phenomenal talent acquisition team who cares very, very deeply about DEIB. And then that rolls over into the workplace. And so, a lot of companies, I believe, spend a lot of time and effort on the recruitment components, but don't sleep on, what's happening like once your employees actually get there. Because if you don't take care of home, it's going to be like a hot lava situation. People are going to come in and then bounce right back out.
Yeah, no, so is there any cost or associate like when you don't retain somebody? So say
Mhm.
you're nailing it and people are attracted to you because you've
Yes,
got this externally facing like polished statement of who you are and what you do, so people are attracted to that. And if you
yes,
sleep
yes.
on the internal culture,
Yeah.
like what are the costs of that, like hidden and explicit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, retention is a real business metric. And it is one that we do monitor and watch very closely, especially like looking to retain, like our top and like high performers, which we have an abundance of at Guild because it attracts lots of really, energetic and smart people. Um, but there's also, looking at productivity and performance. These are other business metrics. And so one of the DEIB terms is called belonging,
Yep.
which I think a lot of folks are familiar with. But what they may not know is that research has demonstrated over time that when you invest in creating cultures where everyone has an opportunity and where folks can you know, be their authentic selves, that increases retention,
Hmm.
it increases productivity, and it increases performance. And all of that drives the bottom line. So it's really, really important, to make sure that companies are paying really close attention to that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you've been in this area, like the equity and inclusion area, for quite a while. Have you
Uh-huh.
noticed any changes over time versus where we are today in this season of DEI?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, of course, I think probably the elephant in the room is, the naming conventions of this work. So I think that when I was in school, it was maybe called multicultural affairs,
Okay. Okay.
and then diversity, and then diversity inclusion,
Hmm.
diversity equity inclusion, and then yes, so on and so on. And then now it's there are a number of companies and organizations which are um, adjusting that language. And I certainly can understand why, kind of giving the current context and a lot of rhetoric about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. A lot of it, which I believe may be misguided or misinformed, because the real heart of the matter is this work is all about inclusion, period. Everyone belongs. Everyone is included. It's not exclusive, not exclusive. And it really goes back to, what are the business outcomes that we're trying to drive? So I'd mentioned before, looking at retention, looking at productivity, looking at performance. These are all really important metrics that any organization, any company, would needs in terms of working with their employees to help drive that bottom line.
Yeah. I have a background in diversity, equity, and inclusion as
Yes,
well. And it has always been merit-based and inclusive to everyone.
that's
Do
right.
you have any insights as to those who maybe have felt like this work wasn't for them?
Yep, yep.
Um, have you any thoughts on how to open up or make it more welcoming to folks who may feel like, oh, this isn't for me?
Yeah, absolutely. I so a couple different things. One, I think that it's really important to, be thoughtful about how you're talking about the outcomes that you're driving.
Mhm.
And so perhaps instead of, just centering on words that may or may not be understood or may have been misconstrued, it's
Right.
what are we actually doing? What are we actually trying to achieve? Oh, you want to increase access for everyone, for all. Oh, you want to create workplaces where people are feel safe to take a risk, which
Mhm.
is great because that's good for innovation. We
For sure.
want to, yeah, we want to have these spaces where folks are getting creative, leaning in with curiosity, asking lots of questions, are not afraid to interrogate or challenge the status quo. That's how innovation and unlocks happen. And that's how, when you build that trust, you can move fast. And if you do, make, a mistake or what have you, you can course correct and pivot really easily.
Yeah, when you said earlier, like you've got to take care of home first, then in this kind of context, each team kind of becomes a little home. So in the type of misunderstandings or lack of access can be
Yeah.
brought up and discussed, hopefully in a healthy manner. Is that type of goal that you have for the teams that you work with?
That work with, yeah. Yes, absolutely. I think that's exactly right, John. And you can like sort of fill in the blank of what the content of the subject, could be. But the bottom line is fundamentally, as human beings,
Yep.
we all want to be respected. We all want to be appreciated, and have and feel that our voices and our ideas matter,
Mhm.
and so what often can get overlooked, and this is I've encountered by folks who are very well intentioned, but perhaps have not had the experience of being othered or silenced,
Mhm.
is that really leaning in and paying attention to, who's represented here, whose voices are in the room, whose experiences, and who's not, and be willing to say, hey, what I'm hearing here is really interesting and thoughtful. And I wonder, what about X, Y, and Z? And so if we
That we not heard from? What perspectives are we not considering?
exactly, yes, yeah. And what you do hear a little bit more, kind of recently is like diversity of thought,
Right.
which, it, for what it means fundamentally, that's great. And diversity of lived experiences is what's going to contribute to that diversity of thought.
Absolutely. So, you know, in the current environment, we're seeing DEI get lumped together as if it is one thing and that thing is unfair and it's the cause of all these other problems, right? So I don't want to unpack that.
Sure.
But DEI, as we know, has all these multifaceted areas in which we're trying to create fair and equitable
Yep.
workplaces for all. You've mentioned
Yep.
a few things that fall into an umbrella of psychological safety as
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of data on if you have a psychologically safe environment,
Yep.
you actually have an environment where everyone can be more innovative.
That's right.
So you can solve problems creatively. You can catch mistakes a lot quicker because there's no fear of being labeled as someone who makes mistakes just because you've exposed them. Um, uh, the areas that this comes into play, right? Like with the diversity of thought,
Mm-hmm.
like just in that context, it like conflict, right? If you have diversity of thought, that means you have differing ideas. And when you
Yes.
take into account team culture, perceptions of who holds power, who doesn't, how do you go about creating that on the team level, on the company level, and expand that out?
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you and I had the magic potion,
Mm,
then we
I
then
wish.
we might be on a beach somewhere. But you know, it's but the good news is it's not impossible.
Okay.
In fact, I think it's pretty simple. It's just a matter of the will, you know, to
Mm,
do that. And it fundamentally starts with, you know, these concepts of respect, curiosity, and you know, putting that effort to creating trust. Because if you don't have those fundamental blocks,
hmm
then folks are not going to feel comfortable or safe to be able to lift up a dissenting opinion. They're not going to be more forthcoming in terms of the challenge.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you shared or what you stated, though, a moment ago about power. And I think that's something that's really important. So not just the power, perceived power of those, you know, individuals or voices that are in the space or kind of weighing in on a decision or a product or what have you, but also the proximity to power, which is something that sometimes, you know, can be overlooked or forgotten, but does matter.
And how would that proximity to power
Mhm.
provide either an advantage or a
Yep. Yep.
disadvantage to those
Mhm.
involved?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I may be wading into a more of a sensitive topic in kind of our current context, but I'll go ahead and kind of wade in there,
Okay.
which is, you know, when we have looked at as DEIB practitioners, different demographic data and where folks sit within an organization, um, often, not in every case, but more often than not, you will find folks from historically marginalized communities who are
Mhm.
at the more kind of like entry to mid levels of an organization,
Right.
whereas folks who are historically not marginalized tend to be more those sort of mid layers and the top. And so when you look at where decisions are being made,
hmm
oftentimes it is at the top. And so that proximity to power is reflecting where are folks within your organization and how to what degree do they have an impact or influence over those key decision makers and those key stakeholders.
Okay. So then becomes a system that ends up feeding to the needs of the majority. If the only people that you're asking sit in positions that
Right.
traditionally or what the data shows us are held by folks who have are well seated in the majority, however you look at that,
Hmm.
whether that be male, whether that be white, depending on the culture. Okay, so that's like one view of power. But since we're opening this door, right?
Yeah, sure.
There's another element of power that I think could sit with a group that is in the minority.
Hmm.
And so if I'm a well-meaning manager and I am like wholeheartedly trying to get it right, but
Yeah.
I have never interacted, let's say, across racial lines, or I'm
Yep.
very comfortable. Like I don't have a lot of relationships, but I want to get it right. Like the time
Yeah.
is showing that yes, we've seen what people are up against. I want to create access to folks. But if I misstep
Yep.
or say something wrong,
Hmm.
we see so much of this externally that one misstep is enough to get someone shut down or even
Yeah.
canceled.
Yeah.
In workplaces,
Yeah.
a lot of folks who are well-meaning but
Yep.
not well-skilled,
Yes.
supposed to build that skill when
Yep.
it feels so high stakes and people's identity, their job, their
Mhm.
opportunities are involved.
Totally. That's as 100%. And I love that you brought that up. And it like it really pains me to see people who are honestly trying, but perhaps have, misstep. I mean, who among us has never, made a boo-boo or a misstep, right? Like please raise your hand.
I've made a lot. I mean, in my journey, a lot.
Yes, yes, same. And I will continue to because will always be learning. And so it's so that goes back to that the culture of, curiosity and leading with positive intent, and building trust. Because when you have those bones, that structure in place, that gives people a little bit more of a okay confidence or courage to be able to kind of lean in and ask a question. Um, we at Guild have done, I think, a really great job of building out our employee resource group program. Some companies call them BRGs or affinity groups.
Right.
And this is a really incredible way in which folks, they active allies, can join, and you can participate as, at least in my context, as much or as little as one feels comfortable. And so even like more of a passive way of joining, but just kind of as an observer, joining a
Mhm.
Slack channel or a group and watching the dialogue, and then taking another step and actually, attending a program, and then maybe taking another step, and getting more active or volunteering. And so what ends up happening, and as I like to say, ERGs melt silos.
Mm.
And I love when you went back a moment and we talked about power, and you're like, wait a minute, girlfriend, power is it?
That was that you nailed the tone, but I don't think those were the words I used, but that's definitely the intent I
Yeah,
was trying to have, right?
you're right. You're right. That was what was in my brain. And I love it. I love it. And it totally works. Because we all have power. We all have power.
Mm.
And so, recognizing and stepping into your power in and of itself is powerful. And I do believe very strongly in reciprocity or reciprocal relationships.
Hmm.
And so when I say ERGs melt silos, that's dropping your uh, titles, your tenure, and the, how many years have you been, nah, none of that. It's really just like, hi, I'm a human, and I have some of these identities that are really, really important to me, and I'd
Hmm.
like to share. Great. And we're going to reciprocate because that feels good
Yeah.
and that helps build that trust.
So much of my personal growth and learning was through involvement in multiple different ERGs. And I want to give a nod to those that are in the ERGs who have the grace and have the emotional skills to put aside any of their issues for the moment to share or to give feedback that, hey, what you think you're saying may land differently
Mhm.
without themselves getting caught up in it, like where they saw the intent and were able to give grace. That doesn't always happen. And I think that's a real skill. It's a real confidence level that folks who either lead or participate in
Yeah.
ERGs become ambassadors to
Yes.
different identities and can help like smooth those edges of
Yes.
having these conversations that sometimes get in the way of or really, really facilitate understanding across differences that could seem a mile wide at the end of
Yep.
a meeting
Yep.
can, you can make a new connection and a new a friend, a new go-to and expand our minds. One of the best quotes that sticks with me from one of my favorite musicals with a star that grew up here in Pittsburgh
Mhm.
was the Broadway show Kinky Boots. And Billy Porter won a Tony for that here in Pittsburgh. But if you can change your mind, you can change the world, And it is really a question of mindset. So many folks
Mhm.
get wrapped up in, I want to show that I'm on the right side. I've learned this and I'm changing my language, But then even when you're trying to do good, somebody might call out and say, "Oh, you're being performative." And you're like, "I don't even know what performative is, but it sounds bad. I thought I was doing a good job," right? So there's
Yeah.
so many layers
Mhm.
to this work, and I love the emphasis on ERGs. Um, so knowing that, right? So I know that another form of ERG, another element of ERGs is providing safety for those who may be the only person like them in an office or othered. You come into a company's ERG and you realize, okay, here are my people, here are other
Yeah.
people that might have an experience or more easily um, starting up a relationship that is supportive. Um, how do you take care of the ERG folks? And as we look to empower leaders to make these changes,
Yes.
see that there's this kind of bringing in of wellness, well-being, and
Yes. Yes.
resilience. Do you bring any of those components into this work as well? And how have you seen that change?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so we have 8 employee resource groups,
Yeah.
and several of these, so all of them are intersectional. All of them are open to every single employee. And we do have a number of them that center around identities that might not be apparent or visible
Okay.
identities. So
Okay.
age is one of those. We have
Okay.
Generation Guild. Another one is our disability action community, which I think speaks, directly to your point, which you can go back to in just a second. Um, we also have an ERG, which is looking at caregivers, at all different, ends of the spectrum. And
Hmm.
so by creating these communities where we give people an opportunity to identify an identity that may not be one that is visible or apparent, that helps, again, back to your point about, well, how do I kind of get into this? Well, we really do have something, for everybody. Um, the wellness, employee culture, and maintaining and continue to pour into that is so important. And it really just, cycles back to kind of what we talked about, like at the top of our conversation. And in addition to the great work that we're doing with our employee resource groups, there's also a phenomenal benefits team. And so I've got the great joy and pleasure of being colleagues with folks on the people team who are very engaged and very skilled in our benefits. And so, when people are looking at different companies to join and different organizations to be a part of,
Yeah.
they want to see, hey, what do your leave policies look like? What are your health insurance? Do you focus and pay it, on mental health and wellness? How supportive are you of, growing families, et cetera? And so we really pay close attention to all of that. And one of the ways that we kind of keep a pulse is by doing these like really robust internal surveys to make
Mm.
sure that what we have to offer is meeting the needs of our employees.
Oh, it sounds like really wonderful stuff. So, as you continue this work, right? And as I will too. One of the things I equip leaders with who are dipping their toes into this or taking risks and trying to get more involved,
Hmm.
to work with them to understand how to make an authentic and real apology and ask for
Mm,
when they've getting the feedback that the impact of their actions or their words are not having the intent that they wanted. Um, Outside of that, do you have any uh, tips or suggestions for leaders or teams that are trying to lead more inclusively? What type of advice would you give?
yeah, absolutely. So what you just named is real. And some concrete advice I would give if you are a leader or anyone, a human, who has, oops, made a boo-boo, and inadvertently or accidentally misstepped or offended someone. I think the first thing to do is to just do a very quick internal scan. And I say that because so often we feel it in our bodies,
Mm,
either consciously or unconsciously. And so you want to make sure that you are aware of yourself. Now, as I'm saying that, the next thing I'm going to say is probably going to sound like, what? But
okay.
that second piece is then you decenter yourself. So you don't make it you're cognizant of how of your state, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't make it about you. And
Mm,
so you listen with curiosity and you assume positive intent from the individual who's giving you the feedback. I personally, Malaika Serrano, believes the feedback is a gift.
mm-hmm.
Most feedback. Is it?
That's cool, yeah.
Yes. I know about the feedback from my kids, but not, but it is if you're receiving it in that way, and it actually takes a lot of courage for someone to say, hey, and so, kind of like mutually acknowledging that
Mm-hmm.
can really like help diffuse um, the tension. And what, as a recipient of the feedback, what you don't want to do is get defensive. Like, well, I didn't mean that. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
So that's why you take a breath, that nervous system, you decenter yourself and you listen, you lean in with curiosity and you appreciate the person who's giving you that feedback because it might have been very difficult for them to do so, especially if it's a person from an historically marginalized community.
I love it. Easy to say, hard to do. Lots of emotion skills, I think, involved in that, regulation, self-awareness, a lot. And with you committed to keeping this work going forward, I really feel like the world will be a better place. Let's expand your reach as much as we can. But like, I just really want to say thank you so much for making time today. I feel like we could talk for a lot longer, but we need to close out this conversation. Thank you so much for making time today.
Oh my gosh, John, this was so much fun. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.